It's me and my friend, Little Big Guy, and he is Tails. And I found a glitch! I am invisible. Where am I?
LittleBigPlanet, a game series that's very important to me. I met a lot of cool dudes just by finding them in levels or diving into their pods. I don't really talk to them too much anymore, but I'm not gonna lie, I still talk to at least one of them. Anyways, people don't talk about the series too much anymore, and I'm sure there was a good reason for that. Nothing really bad happened to destroy most of the community or anything. I'm sure it's just that people got bored of making levels and moved on. Alright? Yeah, let's not get into that right now. If you've never heard of LittleBigPlanet, first off, what's wrong with you? And second, it was a game released on both PlayStation 3 and PSP. The PlayStation 3 version launching in 2008, and the PSP version would later launch in 2009. But as a matter of fact, in October it will actually be 10 years since the PS3 version launched, and that's kind of nuts, since I still remember the first commercial from when I was like 7. And if you didn't know, this is one of my favorite games of all time. I do like the second one a bit better, but today, I wanted to talk about the first entry in the series, which was LittleBigPlanet for PS3. I'll talk about the PSP titles, spin-offs, and other games in the series if you guys enjoy the video and want me to do more, but for now, let's talk about this amazing game. LittleBigPlanet was a very new idea to Sony at the time. Not only was it a 2D platformer, which Sony wasn't really known for, but the big focus of LBP was the community-created content. It wasn't common at the time. Looking back, it's really cool, especially since the content was shared online for thousands to play. Think of it as Sony's Mario Maker, 5 years before Mario Maker was even a concept. But Media Molecule, a video game development company based in UK, created LittleBigPlanet after Sony was impressed with what they showed off. They were so impressed that they purchased the exclusivity rights to the series not long after. That just shows you how much faith they actually had in the project. One example of them really trying to push the game was when they made a level for E3 2008 to not only show off what you can create in the game, but also to show off the strong game lineup that the PS3 already had, not to mention the amazing sales of each PlayStation console.
And something we've seen before on PlayStation platforms, and only on PlayStation platforms, more than 1.5 million PS2s for a product in its 9th year on the market. In other words, we've sold in more than 5 billion units of hardware across the PlayStation family in the first 6 months of this calendar year. And again, that's just in the United States.
And if you didn't know, around 2008, people started to throw shade at the PS3's bad game lineup in the library at the time. And yeah, at the time, Xbox 360 didn't have all of the exclusives. Looks like the tables have turned. But let's not get into that right now. I want to talk about LittleBigPlanet, the best game ever. On October 21st, 2008, LittleBigPlanet was launched in North America. I never picked up the game until 2011 because that's when I actually got my PlayStation 3, but I did play the PSP game in 2009, which is a really different version from the PS3 game. But again, I will talk about the PSP game some other time. The game was just so awesome when I first played it. The first levels I actually remember playing was a Angry Bird bomb survival of some sort, and a colorful shark survival level. Yeah, I've played those hundreds of times. Maybe thousands. But there were thousands of other awesome community levels I remember playing, and I had a ton of fun playing with my family members and real-life friends too. Aside from the community levels, there was a create mode, obviously, and there was also a story mode. My Moon was just the place you would go to create your own levels and publish them. You could also copy some of the community-created levels if you wanted, which was one of the worst features in the LBP series. It honestly hurt the community a lot throughout the 3 games in the main series. There was a ton of people that would just copy, paste, erase, and repeat, and the cool levels, which is the main place to go to find popular and hot levels at that time, was just filled to the brim with either garbage or the same exact levels that were being published for years. And you would constantly see them all the time. This problem, again, like I said, sadly continued into the other games in the LittleBigPlanet series, but it was a lot worse in the second game. The one name I remember who was the most hated member of the community at the time was LatinPlayer. Not only did he repost these levels every single day, but he had multiple accounts to do so. And his copy levels plagued the community for years, but if you look enough, you will find some really unique and fun levels every once in a while. And those are probably the best times I had playing this game. If the endless amount of community levels weren't enough for you, then just head over to the great story mode the game had. A really cool thing about the levels in story mode was that they were all made inside of the create mode using only tools that other players were able to use. So if you really wanted to, you can actually recreate all of the story mode levels. The story mode had a lot of charm too, with all of its characters and different themed locations for all of the worlds, such as the savannah or the gardens. And don't even get me started on acing every single level for a 100% completion. That basically means completing every level without dying, and I still need to do that. The story mode itself has a ton of replayability. There are so many collectibles that you could get, and all of the collectibles can be used in create mode to create your own levels. Even if you have all the collectibles in the game, you could also help your friend out with their collectibles and collect them for them. It's a lot of collecting! I remember wanting it when I first saw the commercial, but like I said, I didn't get a PS3 until much later. But I know when I got one, LittleBigPlanet had to be one of the first games I play on it. And if I had to sum up the game in one word, it would be imagination. If the copy feature wasn't a thing...
Rated E for everyone. If fun didn't matter, Halloween costumes wouldn't come in adult sizes. And no food would be available on a stick. If fun didn't matter, bendy straws would stay straight. And parachutes would only be used in emergencies. If fun didn't matter, no guitars would be electric. But fun does matter. LittleBigPlanet, only on PlayStation 3.
After the first game was released, there were plans to expand LittleBigPlanet with new story levels and new create tools for people to use. Media Molecule, who wasn't really sure if they wanted to make a traditional sequel for the first game or not, started to support the first game as a platform where they would constantly release extra content to make the game feel fresh. This included paid DLC costumes and level kits that had additional items like stickers, objects, and completely new tools for people to work with to create brand new levels. After a while, they realized it wasn't enough. They had so many creative ideas left, and just shoving them into the first game wasn't an option. It was time to move on. It was time for LittleBigPlanet 2. LittleBigPlanet 2 launched in late January of 2011, and that's just over 2 years after the first game launched. It's really crazy too, because the amount of content this game had compared to the first one is just amazing. Media Molecule made sure that the sequel lived up to the creativity of the first game, and with this game they went beyond with everything. For example, just start with the create tools. They added Sackbots, which acted like a copy of the playable character Sackboy, but you were able to do a whole bunch of things with it. You could record exact movements and either make them loop or play once. You were able to make them talk with your PlayStation microphone, and you could even make it so that they could follow you or run away from you. With the new logic tools they added, you could even control a Sackbot with the brand new Controlinator, which was a tool used to control almost anything, and was used a ton in different creative levels in so many different ways. Whether it was controlling a Sackbot with crazy superpowers, or an animated sprite of Sonic the Hedgehog in a Green Hill Zone level, the Controlinator was used a lot in this game. That's just the tip of the iceberg though. With the amount of complicated and not so complicated tools this sequel offered, people were able to come up with endless possibilities. They also added a music synchronizer into the game, and you were able to make music, just like in any music making program. You were then able to use that music in levels or films. Oh, and yeah, you were able to make short little films now. It was just another neat little feature, and people used them to make funny little skits or films based off of YouTube videos or something. Some crafty people even made full-blown 20 to 30 minute movie-type films that spanned across multiple levels because they couldn't fit in just one. There were a lot of those, and they blew my mind back in the day. The one that I remember the most was Truth or Dare, Dares of the Last, and it was a 23-minute long film that was made by a dude named Shane with the help of his friends. It came out really great, too. I remember watching this particular film the most, and rewatching it over and over again. The film feature was really cool, but that still wasn't it. LittleBigPlanet 2 had a bunch of new gadgets that were added to enhance gameplay in certain levels. These gadgets included the Grabinator, the Grappling Hook, and the Creatinator. Both the Grabinator and the grappling hook are both pretty self-explanatory. You could pick up grabbable items and throw them with the Grabinator, and grapple certain objects with the grappling hook. The Cratinator, on the other hand, was very unique and was something people can mess around with on their own to make their own versions of it. With it, you can make it shoot out or spawn almost any item with a press of a button. You were also able to adjust the launch distance and speed, which was cool. That's pretty much the basics with the new tools they added. I'm not too much of a pro with LBP logic, so I can't go too deep into that, but what I could go a bit into was the story mode of this game.
In a world where imagination is king, an ancient evil stirs to threaten the very survival of the cosmos. Clive!
Yes, Mr. Science?
Fetch my tall orange macchiato.
Oh.
So, if you've ever played story mode in the first game, you would know that it was pretty neat with all of its characters and themes for each of the worlds. But it felt like something was missing. The characters didn't feel like they had a lot of life to them, since they were really just a mishmash of objects or cardboard cutouts with eyeballs and a mouth glued on. I love LBP1's characters, and it fits the style of the first game well, but if you wanted more expression out of the story mode characters, then LittleBigPlanet 2 had it covered. The sackbots I talked about earlier were used a ton in this story mode, whether it was in cutscenes or just during gameplay. Each of the worlds had their own characters like the first game, but now they're all based on Sackboy with their own twists. You had Larry da Vinci, who was made out of paper and cardboard with a pair of cool 3D glasses. Then you had Victoria von Bathysphere, and she was just creepy. But you also had Clive, a shy dude with a notepad as his head. There were also a couple other hooligans who all formed the group known as the Alliance to take down the main antagonist for this game, the Negativatron. And hey, they stuck with the glued on eyeballs for this guy. All of these characters were great, and they're probably my favorite in the entire series as far as story mode characters go. As for the story mode levels, I thought they were really great. They were creative and really fun to play by yourself or with a friend or two. Just like in the first game, it's pretty tough to collect everything in the game and complete every level without dying, but if you want to get that platinum trophy, go for it. Trust me, it's worth it. If you're into those things, I guess. If you were a creator, then getting that platinum trophy might be worth it. Collecting all of the prize bubbles means you have more stuff to use in levels, and that meant backgrounds and materials from story mode. That also meant stickers and costumes of the story mode characters. That might be useful for creating the exact level you want. Using these story mode assets, you could create your own levels, and it's really cool to just have everything in the game.
Dear PlayStation, we just finished LittleBigPlanet 2, and I just...
No, you didn't.
Huh?
You don't finish LittleBigPlanet 2. You may think your Sackboy's adventure is over, but every day, thousands of new racing, action, and sports games are loaded onto the PlayStation Network that are better than bacon-wrapped cupcakes.
Wait, so if there's always new stuff, how do you know when you're done?
You don't.
Whoa.
People have created millions of levels throughout the 7 years of LittleBigPlanet 2's life, and they still continue to create some pretty amazing levels to this day. Sometime after LBP2 launched, the community reached its highest point, with even more people joining than the first game. It showed with the amount of creative levels people were pumping out every single day. And yeah, LBP1 had some pretty cool levels too, but it didn't really matter because all of the levels from the first game were backwards compatible with the second. But with it being backwards compatible, you also had more copy levels. And those copy levels overshadowed the original levels a lot, like Mortal Kombat and some others I don't remember. But trust me, if you look around, there are tons of great levels to play. The one creator I would always check out was Mangreek. There were 3 levels of his that I remember going back to a lot: his Monkey Survival level, his Doomsday Survival level, and his Toy Train Bomb Survival level, where the bombs were just Lego pieces. I've played probably thousands of great levels on LBP2, but I just can't remember most of them on the top of my head. If you really want to find them, just check out my profile and check out my hearted levels. You probably will find some of them. But yeah, the community was pretty awesome overall, and you could still go back to this game and find yourself having fun for probably years to come, just because there is an endless amount of levels to play. There's also an endless amount of things to do. But it's been a while since I play the game consistently nowadays. I would go back to it every now and then just to check out my old items I had in create mode. It's still a pretty active community. Not as active as it was 5 years ago, but after the third game was announced in 2014, I was excited to see where the community would go next. It's about time I talk about LittleBigPlanet 3. a game that was seen as a big low point of the entire series by a lot of people, including me. Why is this game seen as a disgrace to the LittleBigPlanet series and its community? Did it not live up to past LBP games content-wise? Was the game just not fun? Well, I'll get into that soon enough. I'll give my honest opinion about the game itself, why the community as a whole dislikes it, and my experience with it. But first, what happened after LBP2 came out? What happened before LBP3 was even announced? LBP2 was my favorite game in the series. I didn't have a PS3 back when it launched in early 2011, but it was a game I would pick up around a year later. I spent about 2 to 3 years of my life just playing the game after school for 3 to 4 hours almost every single day. I've played a lot of what the community had to offer, both good and bad, fooled around in the create mode with friends, and even met a lot of cool people. But every now and then, LBP2 would get a huge level pack, usually based off of popular IPs like Toy Story or even the Muppets. All of these DLC level packs came with new materials, music, objects, and stickers, giving players even more stuff to work with to create some neat levels. Some level packs even included major tools and gadgets that expanded the gameplay options already available. These tools included things such as a superhero cape from the DC level pack, the Attracto gel from the Muppets level pack, and even some crazy gimmicks that required other PlayStation products like the Move controller functionality and even the PS Vita crossplay function. Overall, LBP2 had so much content added to it over time, even on top of all the new tools that were introduced in the base game. Even outside of LBP2, you had LittleBigPlanet Karting coming out in 2012, along with LBP Vita, which honestly were both really underrated games in my opinion. After another year, things started to get stale in the LBP community, as copied levels have reached its peak. Great levels were being overshadowed by the same old Mortal Kombat and Shark Survivals to the point where it was really hard to find those really creative levels. And eventually, the game just got boring for a lot of people. Nothing really crazy happened to LittleBigPlanet 2 anymore as far as DLC goes, other than a few costume packs and maybe one more big level pack. It was at the point where people were hoping for a brand new LittleBigPlanet game. And on August 20th, 2013, we got the announcement of a free-to-play LBP game.
And what do we call this magical world of wonderment? We call it the LittleBigPlanet Hub. Perfect.
Yeah, a game called LittleBigPlanet Hub. There was a CGI trailer for it, with the narrator telling us that the game will have new tools, challenges to play against your friends, and even costumes you could buy. It was also announced that it would be free to play on PS3 eventually. Awesome, sounds really cool. Except that it never came out. So we had to wait a whole another year to find out more about our next LittleBigPlanet game, LittleBigPlanet 3. On June 10th, 2014, I woke up at around 2 AM because of a familiar LBP sound that came from my iPod 4 at the time. It was a notification on a LittleBigPlanet app I had ironically named LBP Hub, the same exact name as the cancelled free-to-play game. But the notification was for something I did not expect. Something I didn't think was actually happening anytime soon. An announcement for LittleBigPlanet 3 for both PS4 and PS3. It was finally time for a new game in the series, and the trailer for this new game was really promising. It showed off so many new additions that I didn't even know I wanted, like the brand new characters for example. There was Onsock, a dog-looking character that could wall jump, a character named Swoop who could fly, pick up things while flying, and could glide. And then you had this big-looking dude named Toggle, who was able to change between a big and small size with the press of a button. Along with these new characters was the main villain of the game, Newton, who honestly had a pretty cool design as well. But a very surprising addition that was shown off, and an addition that was pretty big, was the expansion from 3 playable layers to 16 playable layers. Anyways, this game looked promising. I was hyped and I couldn't wait to get my hands on it that November. It just looked like a better LittleBigPlanet 2 for the next generation console, and nothing bad could possibly come out of it. Well, the game launched on November 18th, 2014, and everything bad that could possibly happen, happened. The game was a broken and buggy mess. People's profiles were being corrupted, and they had to delete their save files. Menu navigating was an awful and slow experience. People weren't able to join online sessions, and overall, most of the community was really upset and just accepted that LittleBigPlanet 3 was a garbage game and moved on. Maybe go back to LBP2, wait for the bugs to iron out, or just move on completely and leave the series altogether. And sadly, the latter option is what a lot of people took. People were really upset. Not to mention the PS3 version locked out a ton of people from playing with their PS4 friends because they weren't able to play with each other. Yes, the PS3 and PS4 versions were pretty much the same, but you weren't able to play with your friends if you were on different consoles. So not only was the community divided between two different versions of the same broken game, but there were also people still playing Little Big Planet 2. Whether it was because they got sick of Little Big Planet 3 in the first couple of weeks, or the fact that a lot of their friends just play LBP2 and not LBP3. I know many of my friends I met on LBP2 left the series and never came back. Actually, I'm pretty sure all of my friends at this point don't play Little Big Planet anymore. I myself don't play the games anymore, and let me tell you, I was the one person that wanted to give LBP3 a chance. I got the PS3 version when it launched, and after experiencing game-breaking bugs, I told myself that the PS3 version was the bad version. A month later, I got a PS4 and LBP3 for Christmas. I launched the game, beat the first world of story mode, and game-breaking glitch. I was locked in the first world and couldn't progress at all. I had to delete my save file, and still to this day, I haven't even touched story mode again. Yes, I did beat it on the PS3 version, so I don't really care. But still, I wanted to beat it on PS4 as well. Playing Little Big Planet online with friends is the reason I love the series. Why don't I just do that instead? Well, like I said, most of my friends stopped playing as soon as LBP3 came out, so that option's off the table. I then tried to dive in and join some random people. And let me tell you, I really tried. But I would constantly get disconnected as soon as I enter a person's pod, constantly getting the error message, "The game has diverged." There was no way to fix it, and since Little Big Planet was always fun to play with other people, I quickly got bored, playing the game by myself. I stopped playing, hoping that in the future these bugs would be patched out and the game would be better. 2 whole years later, one of my friends got a PS4 and LBP3. I go back to the game to play some good old Little Big Planet until I realized we still couldn't join each other. It was still happening. 2 whole years after launch, the game has not been fixed. What a shame. LBP3, one of my most anticipated games, at least for a little bit, was completely ruined because of a buggy and bad experience. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if those bugs were fixed since 2016, but I don't care. I'm not giving that game another chance. It has been far too long for me to care anymore. It should have been fixed the first week it came out, and the game itself should have had more time to be worked on. So what the hell happened? Well, Sumo Digital, a company that made games such as Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, Dead Island, and Crackdown 3, were tasked to handle Little Big Planet 3. The original creators of the series, Media Molecule, had nothing to do with this game at all, and it was put into the hands of people that had nothing to do with the LBP series, other than some PlayStation Vita crossplay DLC. And because Sony wanted this game to release by holiday season that year, it didn't give Sumo Digital a lot of time to figure out just what they were even doing, and they had no choice but to focus on the deadline. LBP3 was rushed to store shelves that November, bugs and all, just so all the little kiddies could have it for Christmas. Having deadlines like that and having a completely different studio handle a sequel to a series they didn't work on before can cause serious development issues. Look at Metroid Prime 4 for the Nintendo Switch. It was literally just announced that the development of that game will be completely scrapped and will start from scratch because it didn't meet a certain level of quality that Nintendo wanted to see. It was being worked on by a completely different studio, a studio that wasn't familiar with the Metroid Prime series. Nintendo probably saw that the game had issues. It didn't play right, maybe the story wasn't going in the right direction, and they gave the game back to Retro Studios, the original creators of the Metroid Prime games. That is something Sony should have done. If they wanted to make an LBP3, make sure the original creators had some say in it. Yes, I know Media Molecule is working on Dreams. They've been doing so for years, but I have a feeling that they would have put their new project on the side, just for a little bit, to make sure Little Big Planet 3 was as good as it could be. Who knows though? I could be wrong. Maybe Sony didn't ask them to work on it, and they just said no. It's possible. But Little Big Planet 3 sounds pretty bad from what I'm saying. I gotta admit, I'm disappointed with the bad experience this game gave me. I'm upset that the game drove most of the community away, but aside from all of that, the game was pretty alright. I know, I was literally just bashing this game seconds ago, but LBP3 could have been great. I personally bought it on launch and experienced the worst of it, but I can't ignore the fact that it added a lot to expand level creation, and there are so many game-changing ideas introduced in LBP3 worth talking about.
While everyone else was making the same big game, we were crafting something uniquely small. Small is imaginative. Small is heroic. Small is extraordinary. Get ready for an adventure so big, it had to be little. Little Big Planet 3. Stand small.
The game itself, if not broken at launch, could have been my favorite LBP game. Yes, even better than LittleBigPlanet 2. I know people have their opinions on the new characters. They could have been worked into power-ups, or they could have had more to them, but I don't know. Their design's alright, and it's really cool to see new characters in an LBP game besides Sackboy. But forget about the characters for a second, because a lot of the new tools added into this game are really cool. And that's on top of the 16 playable layers. I'm not going to go into all of these tools, but I'll talk about some of the more interesting ones. The first new addition to this game that caught my eye is the Powered Up Creator, and it's exactly what it sounds like. With it, you're able to create your own power-ups, and no, it's not just a copy of the Creatinator introduced in LBP2. Instead of having a helmet with an emitter, you have a tool where you can create any weapon of your choice, whether it's a laser gun, Reinhardt's rocket hammer from Overwatch, or banana nunchucks. Just do whatever you want. You have complete control over what it looks like, what objects and materials you use, and what function it has. In the story mode, there are several tools already pre-made by the developers, which were made using the Power-Up Creator. You had things such as the Pumpinator, which was just a pump gun that could blow certain objects over. There were Boost Boots, and with these, you were able to boost jump. If you had a Boost Refresher object, it would allow you to boost again in midair once you activate it. Another was the Blink Ball, which allowed you to shoot a ball and teleport once it hit a teleportation material. But you get the point. The Power-Up Creator was made to give people the freedom to make their own power-ups, and the ones shown in story mode were examples to show just how much freedom you had. But on top of that, there was also the Pop It Creator tool. With this, you were basically able to go into create mode inside of play mode. This was mainly used in the Pop It Puzzles mode. Puzzles using the Pop It power-up in a mode separate from story mode that kind of acted like a hands-on tutorial in some ways. And hey, Larry Da Vinci from LittleBigPlanet 2 is here. What a neat surprise. Other than those tools, you had a whole bunch of amazing logic. Everything that LBP3 added was great for the most part, and it's a shame that it was ruined for me. The game isn't completely dead, and all of its potential wasn't lost. There are still some outstanding level creators out there on this game today, and I see their creations on Twitter all the time. I just never experienced much of what this game had to offer firsthand. Before I could, I was turned off by how buggy the game was. The story mode was alright. It wasn't amazing, and I definitely liked LBP2's better. I might have liked it more if I didn't have so many problems progressing in the PS4 version, but that's basically all she wrote. Nothing else came from the LittleBigPlanet series after 3. Yes, there were some DLC packs for LBP3, but nothing crazy enough for me to talk about. LittleBigPlanet as a game franchise, like I said before, is really, really, really important to me, and I'm really upset that it had to die for me so soon. I talked about the entire main series, and that's that. There isn't much else the series could do, but it would be nice to see an LBP4 sometime in the future. But tell me in the comments what your experiences were like with these 3 games if you ever played them. I finally covered all 3, and I can't wait to make videos on some of those spin-offs in the future. But I'll see you guys pretty soon. Goodbye.